Hello, hello. Well, warm welcome to this joint Snowflake and Recordly webinar. Happy to have all of you here. We're going to be talking about many things related to AI today. So we're going to be talking about agents. We're going to be talking about Snowflake. We'll talk about real use cases with AI and how to actually make use of these new tools, how to implement them, and how to ultimately drive revenue and make use of the tools in your specific businesses. We have divided this webinar into two parts. I will go second and talk about Snowflake specifically. What are some of these capabilities in Snowflake's context? What are agents, how you govern them, how you control the costs, etc. And then we'll show a demo at the end on how to implement these tools. But first, Niko from Recordly goes and talks about real use cases that he has been working with customers and agent and actual agentic cases. My name is Sami Rouhe. I'm from Snowflake, senior sales engineer at the company for 6 years. Again, welcome, and I'll hand it over to Niko first. Can't hear you yet, Niko.
Sorry, I actually realized that I couldn't hear anything.
Okay, now you're good.
Is my voice okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you hear my voice? Is it okay?
Yes, it is.
Good. Okay. I've been informed that it's my turn. Sorry, I had some issues with my equipment. So, hello, and welcome from my point of view as well. My name is Niko Alanko, and I'm a data engineer from Recordly, and I've been working in the trenches of organizations daily for years now as a data engineer and a platform owner. So, what are organizations up to? Well, actually, just a small word from Recordly first. So, who are we? We are a consultancy, a senior consultancy that's trying to get real value out of data and not just storing it. Kind of setting your record straight, so to say. All right, but what are organizations up to nowadays? There's this a subtitle, The Boring Stuff, in the Moving Past the Hype in 2026. And that's kind of a hint on where we're going with this, because we are seeing a cohesive understanding of AI solutions and requirements improving. And rather than focusing on the flashy stuff, we can focus on the high-value, boring tasks, which usually provide a pretty good ROI in those cases. The high value can be achieved under the hood, and it's usually not that obvious to business side on what the value actually is, but it becomes usually apparent when the final bill arrives. This talk to your data agent is a perfect example of where we're going today. The concept is simple, yet it can have an outsized impact on the business side, on getting the insights out of your data without the added bureaucracy. All right. So the agenda for today, I have 3 categories here, which are foundation, value, and insights. And each of those have some sort of cases described here, which are grounded in real actual cases. And let's jump right into the first one. Yep. Let's start off with the heavy lifting and automation. And as I already mentioned the biggest ROI can be within the basic tasks, meaning that, of course, all of us probably want to build new and exciting agentic workflows, but the kind of everyday boring tasks are what can be easily automated. AI can help with those easily, and we can get immediate results out of them. For example, migrations, well, they sound boring. They're usually labor intensive, but agentic workflows and the value from them is immediate and can boost effectiveness pretty significantly. The first example being streamlining migration and validation. I was debating myself whether to put this here or not, but given the fact that these sorts of cases are still where AI can make a huge impact, I decided not to leave it out, because we can all see the results of AI-assisted migrations pretty easily, and we can see where it can help. And as mentioned, it is usually not that glamorous work. We have maybe thousands of models, complex logic, significant volumes of data, and the traditional approach would be kind of months of manual grinding, getting the transformations right, getting the end results right, researching on why it didn't go so well. The agentic approach, of course, changes that quite a bit. We can use AI agents to help converting the logic from old to new. We can develop migration tool features on the fly. We can heavily utilize AI agents to compare and verify and audit the results of old and new, and investigate autonomously on where it started going different and why. And what that allows us to do is to complete a migration in record time, proving that AI can handle it, freeing the engineer time to focus on the bigger picture, architecture, all those things, rather than punching in thousands of lines of SQL. But there's another side we need to consider with this, because AI makes you faster, but going faster in the wrong direction is worse than slow. So we need to remember the importance of upstream planning and design, because the faster execution only amplifies the importance. AI does exactly what you tell it to do, and poor planning means that we go sideways faster. So what to take out of this is to not underestimate the importance of proper discovery, and the importance is only emphasized today. And the bottleneck really isn't that much if we can build it fast enough, but how clearly we can plan it to allow to build it correctly on the first go. The second example being intelligent registry and compliance. And I'm sure many of us have seen workflows where experts must read hundreds of pages of documentation, perhaps some of it legally binding, to find the tiniest details and the tiniest anomalies, which is understandably a choke point. It's repetitive, It's mentally exhausting, and it leaves absolutely zero room for error. Instead, the AI augmented workflow can direct the cognitive energy where it should be going, towards the decision making, and not really gathering the data and finding the anomalies themselves, because AI is very efficient at that. And here also we have to remember that the goal isn't to replace the human. The goal isn't to let AI make the final high-stakes decisions. The goal is to let AI handle the pre-processing so humans can free their time to making the actual decisions. Oops, I just noticed that there's a little bit of an error on this page. So this is definitely not AI generated slide. Anyway, the point really being that the risk mitigation, AI doesn't approve or deny anything. It prepares the audit trail, summaries, and probably the anomalies or possibly probable anomalies within the case for the senior expert to make the distinction and decision on, so that they can free their time to focus on the more complex cases with more nuances, and let AI handle the audit trailing and summarization of cases where it's more trivial. And the AI handles the part that has been taking hours, maybe days before, but now the senior experts can spend their time where it truly matters. The main takeaway here really being about not automating high-stakes processes fully, but to build an elite-level research assistant to speed up and make the process more effective. Okay. So the next category, intelligent evaluation and predictive logic. This is a slight step up in complexity. AI plus ML can evaluate, predict, and not just process pieces of data to reach certain conclusions. There could be too many variables for humans to test manually, and testing could be very expensive, be it time or material-wise. AI and ML can help narrow the solution space before any human time is actually spent. And the case example here being titled as From Physical to Simulation. I'm sure some of you may already know to what direction this is going, but the main takeaways here being that R&D is expensive, most experiments will fail, and that's fine, that's the nature of it. But AI can help break the long cycles of the early stages of R&D to mathematically calculate the necessary solutions for a given set of required qualities for a solution or a product, possibly cutting the time to market for critical product lines. So instead of starting in a physical laboratory, AI and ML can simulate thousands of solutions in a matter of minutes, which would most likely hit the desired qualities, which then the researchers, scientists can take up on their physical testing methodologies. And the point isn't to replace the laboratory, it is to optimize the workflow of the laboratory. And the scientists can spend their time testing the most probable solutions and not spending their time calculating the probable solutions. Funny that first time only now I'm mentioning it, but data has immense value. To fuel this sort of simulation and workflow, you need historical data, historical solution data, historical testing data, and the quality of that data determines the performance of the model, meaning that the value of the data has to be understood. And a well-structured data platform can turn those years of historical testing and R&D data into a valuable asset. How does this impact an organization? Well, it can compress the time to market, especially from the early stages of R&D. It can save costs, not just in hours, but in wasted materials and all those sorts. And it can result in higher success rate, maximizing the R&D talent time. Our next example is titled Cost of Waiting. This is a solution that sits in the customer-facing interface where the customer is already quite frustrated in the situation usually, be it, for example, billing discrepancies, contract mismatches, disputes, or something of that sort. First of all, managing those is labor-intensive work, and that too leaves fairly little room for error. Especially if it takes time for a case handler to pick up the case and handle the case and close the case, this can lead to dramatically having an impact on how the customer is seeing you and how satisfied the customer is with you. And as mentioned, since this is labor-intensive work, gathering data, this is also repetitive and exhausting work, and AI can help with that, because rushing a decision in these sorts of cases can make the decisions inconsistent, and that also directly reflects to the customer. Okay, well, what the solution to that is what I would call autonomous resolution helpers. Instead of waiting for a human to open up a case to handle it, the workflow changes so that an intelligent agent intercepts the incoming case instantly, does a pre-evaluation on it based on, for example, a set of parameters, compliance requests or requirements, and transactional data if that can be applied, and then gathers that information for a human with a predetermined suggestion for a case, so that the human doesn't need to be the one gathering all the data and making the initial assumptions and cross-referencing, for example, compliance requirements. So the point being that the agent gives the hand, takes immediate action, and human makes the final decision again. And here also the data foundation is the key for this to work, because the agent needs a good quality data set to pre-evaluate the case reliably. If the data is not good, then the pre-evaluation will certainly not be good either. And how does this impact the organization? Well, by allowing the agent to pre-evaluate the case, human time is saved, freeing time again for the more complex edge cases. And this also has kind of a customer satisfaction factor within it, because this is in the customer facing interface of the organization. Okay. So next up we have what I would call intelligence at will, and on-demand enterprise intelligence. And I'm sure most probably all of us have heard of a solution where you can talk to your data and get insights from the data by talking to it. And in many cases today, the focus needs to shift away from pulling reports to asking questions. The workflow should change from developing a report to a question, or having an analytics engineer answer a question within 3 to 5 business days, because the decision probably needs to be made fairly close to the asking point. So you're asking ad hoc questions, you're expecting answers quickly for a question that is of interest right now. So I said shift from request a dashboard to just actually asking a question. And this isn't a luxury for the giants anymore. In fact, a company starting fresh could have an advantage compared to the bigger players, because they really don't have the legacy baggage to account for. They don't have the thousands and thousands of reports, standardized reports that ask or answer a really specific set of questions at any given time. So the next case is appropriately greenfield advantage, which is kind of a spotlight case for today. And in this case, an organization is building its data infrastructure from the ground up, being a greenfield infra build. Instead of copying the standard corporate playbook, they decide to jump straight into the future. And by focusing on building the platform for AI-assisted workflows from day one, they ensure they can get insights from the data quickly, reliably, efficiently from pretty much day one. So, the traditional trap here is to spend months building complex dashboard clusters, training staff to navigate those dashboards for basic answers, and developing new dashboards for every single question, which, at least by my own experiences, is not that good of an approach, and even worse approach today. So what is the approach here? How to kind of go about this? Well, structuring a clean and modern data layer, which is designed for the AI access from day one, is key. And deploying secure agents that kind of act as the conversational layer between your data and the actual human. Bonus points to be had if the adoption friction can be minimized. A little bit about that later, but that helps a ton. And this sort of a solution can scale the business intelligence capabilities without actually linearly scaling the data team, because that frees the ad hoc time away from the engineers. So, how is it built? How does it work? Well, in this case, we will have to start off with the data foundation, which I've already mentioned before. For any of these kind of solutions to work, we need the data foundation to be there and be in good shape. In this case, the data foundation is a centralized Snowflake-based platform where the data is published, modeled accordingly. And shifting the focus from the technology to the business governance and productizing the data, data product ownerships and all those to kind of lock in the organization bureaucracy, which is in this case I believe very needed. And Snowflake in this case handles the heavy lifting, scalability and security natively. Okay, once we've modeled the concept, we need something that acts in between the business and AI and the data. And we've probably heard about semantic views, semantic models before. In this example, I will call it the translator, which means that we need to define a layer which acts as the middle ground between human language and machines. And we need to focus on the semantics. So we need to build governed semantic views within Snowflake, which are then kind of views to map the technical database tables into clear business concepts. And then AI utilizes these to map the natural language questions into technical queries. And now for the bonus points for the interface. To make the adoption easy and seamless with your current kind of setup organization, and without the need to complicate the access and the structure, we need to focus on making it easy. In this case, we are building something that is built directly into the organization's messaging platform, and kind of discussing with your data is as easy as it would be to chat with a colleague. And by integrating that, we can also integrate security as kind of standard in it, and have the access configured in a way that respects the user's accesses to the data platform. And doing it this way, having it within your own messaging platform, makes the adoption process way much easier, because there's no need to learn new platforms, no need to log into anything new, and it's just sending a message and receiving an answer. Okay. So what's kind of to take home from here? The talk to your data agent is simpler than it sounds, and it can pay off pretty quickly. I would say even fast in some places, because it allows for the democratization of data and the access, and empowers business experts to get the insights that they need right this instant. The predetermined dashboards, standard reporting has its place in the reporting ecosystem, but from how I see it, it should only be used in the most common of use cases. For example, financial monthly reporting and stuff like that. And then ad hoc questions to be routed to an agent that can handle those questions, which frees the data team, empowers the business, and democratizes the access securely. So what does it actually look like now that we've been having this slide set, what we call in Finnish the kalvosulkeiset? What it looks like, we covered the why and what, and let's transfer over to Sami from Snowflake for a few more slides and then a show. So thank you from me, and over to Sami.
Thank you, Niko. That was spot on 30 minutes. I really like the Kalvasul case, especially the greenfield advantage case, because the technology stack and the possibilities have really evolved so drastically in the few last months that you really need to, or it really pays off to like think outside the box. And in some cases, when you start fresh, you can really build something new if you're not bottled onto the old like corporate tech stack. So it's very exciting times. Yeah, thanks, Niko. We'll move on to the Snowflake section next. So we'll have a few more slides talking about what do these capabilities mean in Snowflake context specifically, and then we'll do a quick demo on the talk to your data case. So we'll build out, we'll map out the data foundation first, build the semantic layer on top of it, configure an agent, and then talk to the data via that agent. And you might even see what the future of BI might look like at the end. So it should be very exciting for you. And before we start, I forgot to mention in the beginning, there's a Q&A box. So feel free to ask any questions during the presentation. Me and Niko can then answer those or follow up if it's a more complex one. And if you joined after the start, I'm Sami Rouhe from Snowflake, sales engineer, been here for quite a few years now, and we'll be diving into the Snowflake side of things next. The agenda is quite simple. The first 2 points, Snowflake AI Data Cloud briefly and Cortex AI architecture, are overview slides of what are the capabilities we have in Snowflake, what do we mean when we talk Cortex or agent or semantic view. Then the point number 3, Cortex Code and Cowork, are maybe the main agentic tools that you use to talk to your agentic plane that is Snowflake in this case. And the point number 4, maybe the most important one here, agents, agentic governance, semantic views, context, cost. So what are the building blocks or pieces that you need for successful agentic project? Because like Niko mentioned, the bottleneck isn't the tools anymore or the speed of development. It's really more about planning and how you bring all the relevant context to the agent, for example, that you're building, or how can you trust the agent so that you can let it loose on your enterprise data, and how you keep the costs in control, etc. And really, your imagination is also one, like it's very fast to build out stuff. It requires planning and imagination, but the tools are there and the capabilities are there. And yeah, this is going to take maybe 10 minutes, then we'll hop onto the demo and possibly a quick Q&A at the end if we have time. But again, the chat is there that you can use all the time. Okay, so Snowflake AI Data Cloud. I'm not going to go through what Snowflake is in detail here, but just quickly, if you're an old-time Snowflake user like me, Snowflake is not a data warehouse anymore. It used to be a data warehouse, let's say when we go back 10 years in time, but it was a very good data warehouse. Very powerful, flexible. You didn't really need to configure the compute yourself or manage it or think about the scaling or think about the security for that matter. So it was a very good place to build on and implement all these other capabilities that the platform has these days, which of course includes all the AI capabilities. But yeah, so there's basically a few different parts to it. Obviously in Snowflake and for agentic workloads, you need data. So Snowflake is very good at hosting that data, but you can also reach out and kind of like extend that data estate with Snowflake. So if you have iceberg tables, if you have external data sources in Salesforce, SAP, external metadata in BI tools, all of that is accessible and governable from Snowflake. And then sort of the main piece here is the Snowflake Horizon catalog, which sits in the center. So that means all things governance, which is of course very important for the AI workloads as well. And through the Horizon catalog, which is just a term that we use for Snowflake's lots of features, specifically you can search for the data in your whole data estate. You can map out lineage from iceberg to Snowflake through your data pipelines. You can build out semantic views for business context for the agents. You have security controls, governance controls for AI, regular work, etc. And then you, of course, have different options to utilize that data through compute. You can build out visual dashboards and things like that. Cortex is the term that Snowflake uses for everything related to AI in Snowflake. So Cortex is not a capability in itself, it's just the term that we use. It encompasses a few different things. And it's not a separate product. If you use Snowflake, if you have Snowflake, you have Cortex. So Snowflake doesn't deal with licenses. We just talk about usage. So Cortex is there if you have Snowflake. If we start from the bottom, Snowflake hosts in Snowflake security parameter all the latest frontier models and lots of other models as well. So you have good flexibility in the model selection that you can utilize. So you can always pick the correct model for your specific cost profile, for example, that you're looking for, or if you want to switch from the latest Anthropic model to OpenAI model, that's possible. And being hosted on Snowflake means that it's secure. The data never leaves Snowflake, so you can trust the models with the sort of sensitive data. Plus, you don't actually send your company's data to the model, you just do inference with them. Then for the agents to do proper work, you need context. So Niko was mentioning semantic views. Those are very much a key part of building out almost anything related to data and agents. So we'll walk through those in the demo. But context can mean other things as well. So you can, in Snowflake, you can host and configure MCP connectors to reach out to external data sources. You can crawl external metadata to kind of like append to your semantic views based on your enterprise data. And then we have this Cortex Sense runtime, which is a little bit newer thing upcoming, which will basically in the future build out the context layer for you out of the box. So a lot of the stuff that you do today by hand, you might not need to do 1 year from now. Okay, after the context, you have APIs. So these are something that use LLM models, but of course we have the capability to configure agents in Snowflake. We have capabilities to do AI functions and agentic machine learning. So those are there. You can of course use them in Snowflake's context. I'll show you how to kind of like call out to them in the UI, but you can of course use them via APIs from external sources. So you could be in, for example, Teams and call out to an agent that is configured in Snowflake to do a specific task. Then we have those two main tools, which I'll briefly mention and show: Cowork and Cortex Code. So on to those next. And everything is, of course, like I said, this is not a separate product. So Snowflake has very good security and governance policies, and the AI falls into that same governance framework as well, which is very important. Cowork, intended for business users, but why not for anybody else using Snowflake? It's Snowflake's, it looks like a chat window, but it's a little bit more than that. And this was, by the way, called Snowflake Intelligence a few months ago, but now Cowork is the term that we have stuck with. So it's basically a personal work agent. It sits on top of Snowflake. It can reach out to the agents that are configured in Snowflake, and it can bring context from other sources as well. So it's going to be coming out with pre-built connectors to, for example, your Gmail, team conversations, could be connected to Slack teams, etc., etc. So you can basically, if you log into Snowflake, you go to Cowork, you can just start asking questions in natural language, and it has wide variety of context of the enterprise data. And then the cool stuff that you can do here is actually you can share conversations, you can generate graphs, share those, build dashboards even, and you can automate, for example, Monday morning workflows. Give me a briefing of everything that happened with my business during the weekend, and cool stuff like that. And it's also available as a mobile app, so that's quite nice. And it learns as it goes, so it knows who you are, what are you interested in, what is relevant for you specifically. And again, part of Snowflake, not a separate product in that sense. So that's more for talking to your data. And then on the build side of things, we have Cortex Code, now called Coco, because that seemed to be a popular name with customers. This is, if you're familiar with Claude Code, Cortex Code looks and feels very similar. but it's purpose-built by Snowflake for data-specific tasks. You can use it in a few different places. In the demo, I'll be using it in Snowsite or the Snowflake's UI. You also have a proper desktop app where you can use this. You have a CLI, and then you have a Cloud Code plugin. So this is an example of an agentic tool that Snowflake has built, which is available for everybody using Snowflake. Okay, that was the intro. Then quickly, I mean, like Niko mentioned, there are things that are needed for a successful agentic project, even though things feel to be moving very fast. Some of the more important ones, in my opinion, are, like we talked about already, context, because the models don't know your business. You can let an agent talk to your fact tables and dimension tables directly, but expect some hallucinations, or you cannot expect that the model just straight up knows what do you mean by revenue specifically. You want to be able to get coherent answers from the agents, no matter who is asking the questions. For that, you need context. Semantic Views is a very important part of that. We do this, by the way, at Snowflake ourselves as well. So for example, all the sales reps have exactly a tool like this that we're going to build. Obviously, the scale is much bigger, but the same concepts that I'm about to show you apply in much larger cases as well. And when it works, it's really fantastic. You need security and governance because the agents are quite powerful. If you cannot restrict them to do only the tasks that they are instructed to do, they can do some damage, or they could do some damage. But Snowflake has very good controls for that, so we'll talk about those as well. And then, well, cost needs to be somewhat predictable, and you need to be able to budget the costs and control it in some manner, because, well, using the models churns tokens, and the tokens cost money as well. And there's been some horror stories about token costs blowing out the window, but we offer good controls for that as well. So first, about the context. There are other things related to context as well, outside from semantic views, but this is a very important part of that context. Semantic view is not something that Snowflake innovated or anything. It's a generic concept. In Snowflake, it's a first-class DDL object, like you see in the bottom right. It's a create semantic view statement, and it maps out a few different things. I like Niko's comparison that it's a translator. So it translates the technical tables and appends the business context to them so the agents know what they're supposed to be doing. So we map out things like entities, which are real-world objects. What are the relationships between those? Importantly, we can define metrics. So if somebody is asking for a revenue from the agent, how should it be calculated, so that we ensure that these sort of important metrics are coherent across questions. And yeah, usually you don't build these things by hand. You generate them with agents, and then you probably validate them through some human knowledge. And they are like any other Snowflake objects. You govern them with RBAC, and you can use them outside of the agents as well, but agents is usually the main driver for those. And then what is an agent in Snowflake? Generally, agent is just a piece of software that can reason about a goal. It has tools that it can utilize, and it can do multi-step actions based on the user input. And the reasoning usually is done by an LLM under the hood. So that's agent. And agent in Snowflake it's almost like a human user. You can assign roles to it. You can strictly restrict what the agent can do, what sort of budget should it have, what models can it use, etc., etc. And the agent can also have identity. So you can specifically see what was the agent doing in the session where a human was, for example, controlling it. And you can restrict its scope in more detail and so forth. And again, it's a first-class DDL object. You don't need to host it. You don't need to manage it. You just create it, and that's it. We'll show this in the demo as well. A few things about the trust. So again, it's very important to be able to restrict what the agent can do. That's quite easy in Snowflake. You can maybe think of agentic governance in 3 layers. So there's the top level, admin level governance. So in Snowflake, if you're the admin, you can define account level admin agent policies. For example, where can the LLM inference calls go? What sort of models can the agents use, and things like that. And the role-based access controls apply 100% the same way to agents as they do to humans. And then the agent owner who creates the tool can define a little bit more stricter things like what are the tools available for the agent, models, specific instructions, budgets. And then for the end user specifically, they can also, for example, if I'm using an agent and I'm an admin, I can have a restricted session scope for the agent. So for example, when the agent goes to stuff on my behalf, it only has read access to production tables, for example, so nothing bad happens. And finally, about the cost, Snowflake offers budgets, user level limits on AI token credits. I'll mention one thing about Cortex Code, like a pretty compelling argument to use it in data context specifically. Cortex Code, like Claude Code, they can use exactly the same model. So you might ask like, okay, what's the point? Well, Cortex Code has a lot more context about data specific work compared to Claude Code, for example, if you use the vanilla CLI, because it has a lot of skills and a lot of Snowflake specific knowledge, a lot of data related knowledge at its disposal, so it can do work more efficiently, which means less token spent, less compute credit spent. But you can of course use Claude Code as well with or without the Cortex Code plugin. But it's a quite nice tool. Then we'll hop on to the demo. It's quite simple. We're gonna explore some data. I have very small raw tables in my demo environment. We're gonna create some dynamic tables, which we'll do. This is an example of a data engineering step. Then we'll do the translator, which is the semantic view, create an agent, and then we'll go and ask the agent some questions. By the way, here is the Cortex Code in the UI. It's always on the right. So that's there, ready to be used. I can have skills, MCP connectors, choose the model, which one I want to use. I just have it on auto now. And I could just start prompting it and tell it what to do with the demo, but just for fun, I decided to create a skill to run the demo to show you as an example what a skill might look like. Skills are very common in agentic workflows. They're just markdown files which describe a certain process or flow. In this case, it just defines the steps that should be in my demo. And I can then call out to the skill with the / command in my Cortex Code. So now it has the markdown file in the model context. And I can start to execute these tasks one by one. So I can, for example, explore the raw tables. So that then it starts to think and do work for me. It's going to be quite simple. The demo is about a retail store, made-up retail store that wants to implement a talk to your data case on top of their raw tables about transactions and customer loyalty and things like that. And you can always see the actions that the agent is doing. So for example, the SQL is here. And then I got the raw data overview. This is what I have in my demo context. So a few different tables, the row counts, description of what's in there. If dynamic tables are not familiar for you, they are a very easy way of creating incremental processing pipelines. So they are nothing related to AI, but they're a very powerful data engineering capability in Snowflake. So I'll show it quickly. Once it creates those, you can actually declaratively just define the end result of your table, and then Snowflake under the hood will handle the complex incrementalization logic, which is very hard if you think about it when you start to have multiple source tables that you want to do incremental processing on. And now with with an agent like Cortex Code, you can actually just define those dynamic tables with one command. This could be also, my command could have been natural language, of course. And one kind of nice thing here is that, okay, it created those two dynamic tables. And it was actually using a skill for this, because with dynamic tables, performance is quite important. So we want to be able to make sure that the dynamic tables the model creates are performant. So if you use Cortex Code in Snowflake, it will always have lots of skills available for it, much like this markdown file that I showed you, but it's dynamic table specific. And it's always going to adhere to that when it creates dynamic tables, for example. So then we need the semantic view. Usually how customers go about these projects these days is that they have a curated data layer like what we have now. We have few raw tables, and then we have few aggregated tables. And you don't really start to map out and type these things out by hand, but you rather usually let a model create the dynamic semantic view for you, and then you start to kind of like see if the semantic view makes sense for you, what does it contain. So I can quickly show you here what it looks like. For example, this semantic view, we have a few different tables here, sales table, inventory. So these are the dynamic tables we created, and then a few raw tables. We can map out relationships. So transactions, how it refers to customers. We have specific facts. These are not maybe that, like for example here, what does units sold mean? These are facts that we have. The tables that I have, the columns are quite informative, but for example, you could imagine that if you have some cryptic SAP tables, these might be pretty important. You have dimensions like what is the store format, and then it's commented out here, supermarket, hypermarket, etc. And importantly, metrics. So this is one part where we prevent hallucinations. So for example, if a business user comes into the co-work in a bit, and they ask for a total margin across stores, what does it mean? If we didn't define it here, the model might come up with a formula, and the answer might be different across people. But here we have explicitly defined that this is what it means. This is what we mean by total gross margin, for example. Simple examples, but I'm sure you get the point. And the nice thing about semantic views is that, I mean, I'm going to be using this semantic view via the agent, but somebody else might be using this semantic view through a BI tool maybe. So it's sort of a nice thing to have those business metrics and business context defined in a single place. At this point, we usually want to create an agent. So you could say to Cortex Code that, hey, now we want an agent on top of this data set. While it's building that, I can show you the YAML spec. So you don't need to create YAMLs yourself, but you can a little bit see what's usually defined in the agents. So for example, in this simple agent, we have models that it can use. You could restrict those in here. It has specific agent-specific instructions like p-coincidence and data-driven. Use bullet points for lists, things like that. What tools should it use for questions about sales? Some sample questions that somebody might ask this agent. What are the tools available? In here, for example, you could have an MCP connection to Teams. For my agent, I simply have a text-to-SQL tool, which is basically then using the tool resources, this semantic view that we created in the previous step. And then we have defined the warehouse and so forth. Okay, so the agent is there. And a few things about the RBAC before I hop in, or before I go to the co-work. So agent is an object in Snowflake, and in the same manner as you could grant a role, let's say an analyst role, to a person using Snowflake, you can grant roles to an agent as well. And the agent will 100% adhere to those roles. I'm very anti-best practice, so I granted an account admin to my agent. You shouldn't do that, but you can see that the agent cannot do anything that the roles doesn't allow it to do, which is very important. So that's an example of an agent level RBAC, or agent level agentic governance. We also have account level parameters that can be set. So for example, as a platform admin, you could define model allow list for all of the Snowflake account that we are here, that, for example, we don't want anybody to be using OpenAI's models, maybe for cost reasons or something else. You can also define which regions are allowed when you do model inference. So most of the customers in Europe have it defined for Europe. I have any region. And then you, of course, have per user credit limits for Cortex Code and Snowside, for example, or Cortex Code Desktop, which is, by the way, looks like this. Or actually, you can't see it probably because I wasn't sharing it. But anyways, you can restrict the budgets per tool and per users quite easily. And then we can hop on to CoWork, which is the end user interface then, where we can now use that same agent that we just built. And while the demo was very quick and simplistic, these are sort of the main building blocks that you need for building and talk to your data case. In real life, of course, you might have a few more semantic views, and like Niko was mentioning, it requires planning and a little bit of thought, but on paper, it's quite simple, actually. So now I'm in CoWork, and this is my chat window. I have agents at my disposal. This Kauppa agent is the one that we just built. We have extended thinking on. I could also have skills here and connectors to external sources, Gmail, for example. We have deep research capabilities. Okay, here are some of the example questions for that agent. So let's see what it does. I have the Kauppa agent details here. So you can kind of see what data objects the agent is using, what is the agent overview, example questions here. We are now connected to only Snowflake. And if I would, let's say I had an interesting chat with this agent this morning and I wanted to share the chat specifically to my colleague, I could do it here. So one thing that Snowflake is putting a lot of focus on with the CoWork specifically is collaboration between team members. So let's say now the answer came back. So I was actually, the agent that we built was consulting the semantic view, calculating some metrics based on what we defined or what the agent defined in the semantic view. Here we can see what we actually were thinking. We were executing SQL and doing multi-step agentic orchestration. And as an end result, I got back a graph. And this is what the future of BI might look like. So this is going to be very nice. Okay, simple graph, but let's say I'm a business user. I want to share this with my colleagues, and I want every one of my colleagues to consult the same view that I am looking at. I can save these graphs or whatever the agent generates as artifacts, and then I have the artifacts saved here, and I can share these with my colleagues. And when my colleague comes in and looks at this graph, it's going to be always up to date. So this is very powerful. And here, a little bit later on, we will have like proper dashboards that you can create with agentic fashion and share with your colleagues. All right, hopping back to the slides, I think we're almost on time. So this was a very quick overview, some of the capabilities that Snowflake has. So the building blocks at the core of it are quite simple, but very powerful. So I encourage everybody to start to use them. If you have Snowflake available, these tools are available as well, except that you might need to ask your platform admin to enable enable cross-region calls if you want to use Cortex Code in the UI. I think the Q&A box is empty at least. We have maybe a few minutes for a few final questions to put out in the Q&A. And also, if questions arise later, I think you have our emails and contact information, so very happy to answer anything through LinkedIn, for example, or email. Okay, now there's something. How can your colleagues see your artifacts? Good question. There was a share link that you can share. So then when your colleague logs into Cowork, let me just share back super fast. When your colleague logs into Cowork, they have a shared with me pane here in the artifacts. So they would be here then. All right. Don't see any more questions. Like I said, feel free to contact me or Niko after the fact anytime. Very happy to answer anything. And thank you for the attendance. Hope it was useful, and see you in the next Snowflake event.